everybody. It's Andy Molinsky, and I am back with the Get Out of Your Comfort Zone interview series, where we engage thought leaders about the challenges that they have had in stepping outside their comfort zone in their lives, and then, of course, advice that they might have for the rest of us. And today I have a very special guest with me, Jeet Banerjee, who is an entrepreneur, an author, a digital media guru and consultant, and someone who I know has a very interesting take on acting outside your comfort zone. So welcome, Jeet.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Great. So why don't we start in? Why don't you tell us about something that resonates for you when we talk about getting outside your comfort zone, and then then we'll go from there.
Yeah, definitely. So when I first jumped into entrepreneurship, I was even younger than I am now. So I was 17 years old, senior in high school. So the age for me was definitely a very intriguing and different thing for me to get outside my comfort zone. So here I was, 17 years old, entering the business world, trying to pitch clients that were 40, 50, 60 years old on my services and things like that. So the biggest thing that was outside my comfort zone was dealing with my age relative to the others in the industry I was in.
That's really interesting. So let's think of some specific situations. You mentioned pitching clients. I'll bet you there were others too, but can you sort of bring us into a situation if we were a fly on the wall, or if we were sort of filming you in one of these early moments? What was it like? Bring us through it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a really funny story actually that comes from me going to like a client's office and things like that. So I had there was a real estate company that I was pitching to do their web services for. So I had only talked to the guy on the phone initially, and his name was Ken, and I had set up a interview and a meeting with him and all that good stuff. So this was right when I was 17, and the worst part was I was 17, but I probably looked like I was 13 because I had the big baby face going. So I'm ready to meet Ken, and I go down to his office. I drive down there. I come into the to his office. It was like a big office with like multiple cubicles and all that stuff. And then I'm just standing there, and like the secretary is not really talking to me. No one's really talking to me. And then all of a sudden, someone comes up to me and goes, "Hey, like, are you looking for your father, or like you looking for somebody here? Like, what's the deal?" And I was just like, that was like an extremely embarrassing moment for me, because here I was trying to like pitch the CEO of this company, and he's looking at me like, is this just some lost kid in this office? Like, what is he doing here? So that's like a really funny story that I have.
That's awesome. So how did you recover? I mean, imagine it was embarrassing. So it sounds like you recovered pretty well. How did you recover?
So that moment itself was actually very devastating, where like it was like one of my first meetings and things like that. So I ended up just brushing it off and just leaving the office, and I never showed up to that meeting with Ken. And it took me like a few days of like really getting myself. Started having doubts about the whole thing. It was like, oh, maybe I am too young. Maybe this is a big mistake. Maybe I should wait like 5, 6 years and go the traditional route that everyone else goes. But just something inside of me, I had this burning passion, this burning desire where I was just not satisfied if I didn't give it another shot. And then from there, I just kind of decided that I had to make my age something that was more of a value than like a crutch. And once I kind of like became confident about my age rather than being fearful of it, thinking that I have to lie to people and things like that, it became a game changer for me. That's when my entrepreneurial career like really turned around and started taking off.
And what was that passion? Where it sounds like I think a lot of people. So a lot of people I talk with about acting outside their comfort zone tell a story that has a very similar theme. That this was something that they did that was very difficult for them, and they maybe avoided it, like you said. But then at some point they decided they just had to do this. And for everyone, it seems like a different, burning desire, as you said. For you, what was it? Where did that come from?
Sorry. Yeah, absolutely. So for me, that burning desire actually came from. So when I was 15 years old, my parents were like, "Okay, we give you food, we give you shelter, we give you all the basic necessities. But if you want to buy those $60 video games, you want to go out to the movies with your friends, you got to earn your own money, right?" So that's when it really hit me. So at 15, I got from 15 to 17, actually, I got a bunch of different jobs, and my whole plan in life was, okay, I'm going to go to college. Get a business degree, work at some corporation. I'm gonna be the happiest man alive, have a nice car, a nice house, and life is gonna be perfect. So that was like my ideal method for what I thought the perfect life would be at 13, 14. So when I took a bunch of jobs from 15 to 17, I took almost a dozen jobs over 2 years, and I was either getting fired or quitting from every single job. And something just didn't add up for me. And the big issue with for me was I felt like each of these jobs was just some like draining chore that I had to go to every single day. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't have creative freedom. I never got to speak out on dish out my voice and let people know how I felt. And that was kind of the burning passion that I had inside me was I can't live a life like that. And if I got to make money, I got to do something where I feel happy and satisfied doing it. And that's what led me to really go the entrepreneurial route.
It's funny. It's almost like, the way that you're describing it is almost like the type of midlife crisis people have in their 40s or 50s. But since you had so many jobs early on, you almost had like a fast-forwarded version of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
That's interesting. So pitching clients, that sounds like one that I imagine would be outside your comfort zone. What else? There must be other sort of situations, that where you kind of felt like a fish out of water or was hard early on as a young, I mean, before you discovered your youth as a strength or pitched it that way, were there other situations that were hard?
Yeah, absolutely. So, sorry, recovering from this terrible flu. So this cough is just nagging at me for the last few days. But okay, so one of the things that I actually also dealt with was managing employees. So when I started my web design company, I obviously was kind of like the marketing guy who's like going out getting clients, but I didn't really know much about making a website or doing the web development, designing it and all that stuff. So I would outsource or hire a bunch of different employees. And a lot of times these employees would be 30, 35, 40 years old. And a lot of them would have or take issue with taking orders from someone who's half their age. So that was another thing that I had to kind of deal with, and that was an obstacle. And the way I kind of just dealt with that obstacle was just really acting more like a leader. And this was a skill that I had to develop over time because when I thought it was an employee, I just thought like, oh, I'm their boss, so I just whatever I say goes. But it wasn't about talking down to them. It was more about relating with them and that we're on the same level. We're two similar individuals on a similar path with the same goals. And once I kind of learned how to do that and really like valued everyone at the same level as me, that's when I was able to really build some positive relationships with my employees, managers, things like that.
That's interesting. So, do you remember, were there any awkward times initially, or how quickly were you able to sort of get your managerial sea legs beneath you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first few months was actually a struggle with like client projects and things like that. One of the biggest things I dealt with were so a lot of my employees were just kind of taking advantage of me, where they would just kind of blatantly be like, "Oh yeah, I'll get to it," or like just not kind of treat my projects and my jobs with the same level of respect that I would expect them to, or as they would if it was somebody else, because they didn't really have any like respect for me basically because I was so young. So that was one big issue that I dealt with for a few months, and I really had to maneuver and like find the right people and kind of go through loops to figure that out. And then the second thing that I also kind of dealt with was really being able to like critique someone's project. So like before the client sees it, I'm the one that's kind of reviewing the project, doing the project management. So for me to tell my employee like, hey, I don't think this looks good, their response would be, well, I've been doing this 20 years. How long have you been doing this? Right. So that was something that I had to also deal with. And it was just more just figuring out the right words to put it in and then like kind of giving them more examples and like kind of backing my words up with credibility rather than just saying, I think so and so. So those were a couple other issues that I had to really deal with, and it took me probably about like I'd say a good 6 months before we were sailing smoothly.
So I imagine people listening to this must think, "Wow, he was really able to turn every challenge or difficult situation into an opportunity for growth," and you just kind of seem like you just mowed along. Was it like in the moment, was it stressful? Was it difficult? I remember you said when you pitched that guy, that was pretty embarrassing because you left. Were these moments like when you had to manage these, people who are older or in difficult, awkward situations? How quickly did you resolve them? Did it take, days, weeks, months, hours? Like, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So each problem, each obstacle kind of had its like different timelines. There were some timelines that would take like a day or two, others that might like be a lingering issue for like weeks. And the biggest adjustment for me with all this stuff was that I had never done any of this stuff before. So I really didn't know if I was doing the right thing, saying the right things, or any of that stuff. So it took a lot of like self education and opening my eyes and having the willingness to go out and watch YouTube videos, read articles, talk to my mentors, things like that, to really get to solutions for answers. So because I had all those resources, it definitely cut the timeline short for me, and I was able to solve problems a lot quicker. But the overall experience, yeah, there was definitely a lot of stress, frustration, anxiety, things like that, especially when you're a new brand trying to build relationships with clients and your clients are unhappy with you, your employees are unhappy with you, and you're just kind of the man in the middle that has no control over both sides, but you're the one kind of being buried in the flame. So dealing with those situations were definitely a lot of stress and a lot of frustration, but it was just being persistent and just trying to figure out the best way to handle it and just being optimistic throughout it all.
And so you attribute your drive, like your ambition to keep going in the face of all of these obstacles, back to the time when you were 13 or 14 or 15 or whenever it was, and your parents said, "Listen, we'll give you food, shelter, but no Xbox or movie tickets or whatever." Is that where it comes from? Because I imagine there are a lot of people out there who kind of start out something entrepreneurial, have some setbacks, and say, "You know what? I just can't do this." But it seems like you just drove through every obstacle. Where does that come from?
Um, so it probably comes from actually even like a younger age because I used to play a lot of basketball and things like that. And somewhere along the way, I developed this really competitive mindset where like failure was never like an option for me, and I never even looked at failure in a similar way that other people did from a young age. Where like I looked at failure as like, oh, it's just an event or it's just something that happens on a day and a time. As long as I don't give up, then failure doesn't define me and no one's going to even remember it. It's just about learning, bouncing back, and attacking something with even more intelligence and even better. So I kind of had like this super competitive mindset where I wanted to be the best at everything I did, whether it was like playing a game with my family or pursuing this whole entrepreneurial career. So that for me has been like the biggest thing. And I don't know if it developed, like I was a huge Kobe fan. So I remember reading, watching tons and tons of videos about Kobe, things like that. And then just, I think it comes from like my passion for sports. That's where I kind of developed that mindset at a young age because I was all about watching and playing basketball. And I played in a lot of competitive leagues, things like that, where most like 7, 8 year olds would probably not be playing in. So those things really helped shape my mindset, I guess.
So I was going to ask you who your favorite basketball player is. It Kobe?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
How about now?
Oh, man, that question is so tough now. Honestly, the closest thing to Kobe I see now is Russell Westbrook. So I got to go with Russell
All
Westbrook.
right, so I see what you're talking about. It's that he does have that same drive, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So this is really great. Just to wrap up, so what advice would you give to people who are in your shoes? And by the way, by your shoes, I don't mean someone who's in their 20s, young 20s or whatever. I mean someone who's actually, you know, starting something new, where they're a fish out of water. They might feel like an imposter. They have an idea, a vision, and they want to do something, but they're not sure if they can pull it off. What would you say to them if if they don't embody Kobe or Russell Westbrook, and maybe they don't have that in them? What do you say to them?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So my best advice to people would be to keep on going no matter what happens. And I think that's when I talk to other entrepreneurs and things like that, at some point they just gave up and they stopped moving forward and continuing to go because there's always another answer, another option, things like that. And one of the best things I ever read was that you can fail 5,000 times in business, but as long as you're right once, people will remember you for being right that one time. And that one time will make the biggest impact and you can change millions of lives and things like that. So with entrepreneurship, it's not about being right every single time. It's just about going through the process, treating it like a journey, and just continuing to push forward until you find the secret answer to whatever it is that you're looking for.
All right, that's great advice, and I'm sure people will benefit from it. It was fun. It was fun talking to you. I really appreciate your taking the time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Had a great time as well.